Hey guys, tonight we begin with something that challenges everything you think you know about medieval Africa, the University of Sankore in Timbuktu. This wasn't a single building, but a network of private madrasas and libraries where manuscripts literally outweighed gold, and where you could debate astronomy with scholars from Cairo while studying mathematics that wouldn't reach Europe for centuries. By the 16th century, Sankoré taught over 25,000 students and collected hundreds of thousands of manuscripts. But before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe if you genuinely enjoy what I do here, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you. Now dim those lights, get comfortable, and let's discover what daily life was really like in this remarkable center of learning. You awaken not to roosters or church bells, but to the soft murmur of Quranic recitation drifting through the pre-dawn darkness. The gentle cadence of a scholar 3 houses down, already deep into his morning devotions, serves as your alarm clock in the city where knowledge shapes even the rhythm of dawn. Your sleeping quarters reflect the university's unique approach to student housing, which is to say, there isn't any formal system. You lodge in a scholar's compound, sleeping on a simple straw mat in a small room where manuscripts line the walls like precious sentinels. The walls are thick mud brick, built in the distinctive Sudano-Sahelian style, where thermal mass keeps interiors cool during scorching days and protects delicate parchments from the kind of heat that turns centuries of scholarship into expensive dust. The call to prayer echoes off those distinctive pyramidal minarets that dot Timbuktu's skyline like geometric mountains. This architecture isn't just aesthetic. Those thick walls and clever design preserve your scholar host's library from the relentless desert climate. You perform your ablutions with water that's been carefully rationed, because even in a city where knowledge literally outweighs gold, water is still water, and this is still the edge of the Sahara. As you splash the precious liquid on your face, the reality settles in with the same gentle insistence as the morning heat. Today, you'll handle texts containing mathematical concepts that won't reach Europe for another 2 centuries. You'll debate astronomical observations with precision that would astound contemporary European scholars. It's like being handed the answers to tomorrow's exam, except the exam is the entire future of human knowledge, and you're one of the few people taking it. The morning air carries sounds that reveal Timbuktu's true nature, not the isolated desert outpost that most people imagine, but something far more complex. You hear the rustle of thousands of manuscript pages being turned in dozens of private libraries as scholars begin their daily routine of reading, copying, and annotating texts that represent the collected wisdom of the Islamic world. It's the sound of an entire city waking up to go to work at the world's most distributed university. Your study companions include scholars from Cairo, who've traveled across the Sahara with the kind of determination usually reserved for people fleeing justice. There's a student from Baghdad, who made the journey because Timbuktu's reputation for advanced mathematics reached even the House of Wisdom. Another comes from Cordoba, which says something about the city's academic standing when people are willing to cross both the Mediterranean and the world's largest desert just to attend classes. The gentle sounds of other students stirring reveal the truly international nature of this place. Whispered conversations drift through the morning air in Arabic, Songhai, Fulani, and languages from across the Islamic world. It's like living in a medieval United Nations, except instead of arguing about trade agreements, everyone's here to argue about the finer points of Islamic jurisprudence and whether Aristotle was completely wrong about everything. What emerges in these quiet pre-dawn moments is something that challenges everything most people think they know about medieval Africa. This isn't wealth or trade that's driving the city's reputation. It's an almost religious reverence for learning itself. Books are treated with the kind of respect that other cities reserve for gold or holy relics. Scholars compete not for territory or treasure, but for access to rare manuscripts and the opportunity to study with the greatest minds of their time. As you prepare to step outside into the awakening city, you sense there's something fundamentally different about how learning works here. Something that defies everything you thought you knew about medieval universities. The reality emerges as you step into the morning light. Sankore was never a single university building, but one of three major madrasas anchoring a vast decentralized network that transformed the entire city into a campus. Alongside the Jingareber and Sidi Yahya mosques, Sankoré formed the backbone of a system that included over 180 smaller Quranic schools scattered throughout Timbuktu's neighborhoods. This wasn't educational chaos. It was educational genius disguised as urban planning. This decentralized approach created something unprecedented in the medieval world. Private libraries functioned as classrooms. Scholars' compounds served as dormitories, and the entire urban landscape became a massive distributed campus where knowledge flowed as freely as the trade goods that financed it. Mali's rulers had grown wealthy by taxing all trans-Saharan commerce, gold from the Bouré fields, salt from the Tagaza mines, and that wealth directly funded this scholarly network. Every caravan that passed through meant more manuscripts, more scholars, and more resources for learning. You walk through streets where each compound might house a different specialty. One scholar famous for astronomy spends his mornings calculating planetary movements with precision that would astound contemporary European astronomers. Another focuses on Islamic law, his students debating legal precedents with passionate intensity. A third dedicates himself to advanced mathematics that European universities won't encounter for centuries, assuming they could understand it when they finally do. The morning reveals how this network functioned in practice. Students moved between different masters, collecting knowledge like traders collected goods, building personalized curricula that no single institution could provide. The system operated on pure intellectual merit. If a scholar's teaching proved inadequate, students simply went elsewhere, creating natural quality control that kept academic standards remarkably high. What strikes you most is the accessibility of this arrangement. Unlike European universities restricted to clergy and nobility, here the son of a trader can study alongside descendants of kings, united by intellectual merit rather than birth. Social mobility through education isn't just possible, it's the fundamental organizing principle of the entire system. The sounds of the awakening city reveal the scholarly network in action. You hear not just typical market calls and domestic activity, but the scratch of pens on parchment echoing from dozens of private libraries and study circles. It's like living inside a massive research institution, except the research institution is also a functioning city with all the usual urban complexities. Sankore's genius wasn't centralization but distribution, spreading knowledge so widely throughout the city that learning became as natural as breathing. Every street corner might host a debate about astronomical observations. Every neighborhood could become an impromptu philosophy seminar. The entire urban landscape functioned as campus, creating an intellectual atmosphere that permeated daily life. This network structure explains how Timbuktu accumulated an estimated 300 manuscripts, not in a single great library, but in hundreds of private collections scattered throughout the city. Each scholar maintained his own holdings, creating a distributed repository of knowledge that made the entire city function as one enormous university library. The competition between schools created an intellectual arms race that benefited everyone involved, with scholars competing for the best students by offering increasingly sophisticated curricula. As you choose which scholar to visit first this morning, you're participating in an educational model that made Timbuktu the intellectual capital of medieval Africa. The decision carries weight. Each teacher offers different strengths, different approaches, different connections to the broader world of Islamic scholarship. Your choice will shape not just your morning, but your entire understanding of subjects that European universities won't teach for centuries. The sun climbs higher, and the scholarly network of Timbuktu comes fully alive around you. The morning air carries the promise of knowledge that awaits, and somewhere in this maze of mud brick compounds lies your first encounter with texts more valuable than gold itself. Your first lesson begins with something that challenges medieval assumptions, handling manuscripts that commanded extraordinary value. These weren't just books, but scholarly commentaries traded for the equivalent of dozens of gold dinars, in a time when most of the world considered Africa a land without writing. The scholar carefully places before you a manuscript on astronomy, its pages filled with astronomical tables drawn from Mamluk Egypt and refined through local observations. You try not to think about the fact that you're holding what amounts to a small fortune, while your hands are still slightly damp from morning ablutions. These aren't just religious texts, as many assume when they think of Islamic scholarship. The morning reveals works on medicine that would astound contemporary physicians, mathematical treatises that approach problems with elegant solutions, and philosophical works that engage with Aristotle while developing entirely original arguments. The true scope of African intellectual achievement unfolds page by page, each manuscript challenging assumptions about who was thinking what when. You learn the meticulous process of manuscript creation, which makes modern book production look like a casual weekend hobby. The preparation of paper from cotton and linen rags requires specific techniques to create surfaces that won't crumble in the desert heat. The mixing of inks from local gum and soot involves chemistry that creates pigments remaining vibrant after centuries. The careful binding ensures survival in a climate that treats most organic materials like a very slow-acting furnace. Each step represents specialized knowledge passed down through generations of craftsmen who understood that preserving knowledge required defeating time itself. The morning's copying work reveals why these texts command such extraordinary value. Each page represents hours of skilled labor, and a single mistake means starting the entire page over completely, making every word precious beyond measure. You practice forming Arabic letters with intense concentration, knowing that one slip of the pen, one poorly mixed ink that fades, one binding technique that fails, and months of work vanish along with the scholar's investment. The pressure creates absolute focus on perfection. What amazes you is the sheer diversity of sources represented in this single library. Commentaries on Aristotle sit beside original works on Islamic jurisprudence, creating conversations across centuries and continents. Medical texts from Baghdad rest next to local astronomical observations, showing how global knowledge networks functioned long before anyone coined terms like international collaboration. Private libraries here ranged from dozens to over 1,000 manuscripts each, with prominent families like the Haidara maintaining collections that would eventually number 30,000 volumes. The scholar explains his library's organization system, a complex method of cataloging that allows quick access to specific topics among thousands of volumes. This medieval information system demonstrates remarkable sophistication, using cross-references and subject classifications that would impress modern librarians. Books are grouped by subject, then by author, then by commentary level, creating a navigational structure that turns potential chaos into accessible knowledge. As you practice copying a mathematical proof dealing with geometric relationships, you realize you're not just learning academic content. You're participating in the preservation of human knowledge, ensuring these insights survive for future generations. Each stroke of your pen connects you to an unbroken chain of scholarship stretching back centuries and forward into an uncertain future. The manuscript tradition reveals Timbuktu's true role in medieval intellectual life. This isn't just a center of Islamic learning, but a crucial link in the global circulation of knowledge, where texts from across the known world were copied, commented upon, and preserved. Ideas that originated in Baghdad were refined in Cordoba, then further developed in Timbuktu, creating an intellectual network that spanned continents. By midday, your hand is cramped from copying, your back aches from hunching over manuscripts, and you understand why books weren't luxury items for the wealthy to display. They were essential tools of intellectual life, as necessary as food or shelter for anyone serious about learning. The city's economy ran on knowledge as much as gold, creating a market where ideas had tangible value. The morning sun climbs higher, and you've spent hours handling treasures that challenge every assumption about medieval Africa. But the real revelation awaits in the afternoon, when the scholarly network reveals its most remarkable feature: The afternoon study session reveals something that would shock medieval Europeans. You're debating advanced theological concepts with students from Morocco, Egypt, and the distant lands beyond the Sahara. Your Islamic law class brings together minds from across Africa and the Middle East, creating intellectual exchanges that span continents and challenge every assumption about medieval Africa's supposed isolation. It's like attending a medieval United Nations, except instead of arguing about trade disputes, everyone's here to argue about the finer points of legal interpretation, which, considering the passion involved, might actually be more heated than trade disputes. These aren't just foreign students seeking exotic knowledge. They're serious scholars who've traveled months through dangerous terrain because Timbuktu's reputation for learning has spread across the Islamic world like academic gossip, but with considerably higher stakes. Your classmate from Cairo didn't trek across the Sahara for the adventure tourism opportunities. The student from Baghdad didn't make the journey because he heard the local cuisine was exceptional. They're here because Timbuktu offers something they can't get anywhere else: access to scholarly traditions that have evolved in unique directions, creating new approaches to ancient questions. The discussion reveals the sophisticated nature of medieval African scholarship through debates about legal interpretation that require mastery of Arabic literature, philosophy, and comparative jurisprudence. Today's topic involves the application of Islamic law to commercial disputes, which sounds dry until you realize that these legal principles will govern trade relationships across half the known world. The debate requires participants to cite specific precedents, reference competing schools of interpretation, and construct logical arguments that would impress modern law students. Assuming modern law students could handle the additional challenge of conducting their entire discussion in classical Arabic. You notice how your Songhai classmate seamlessly switches between local languages and classical Arabic, embodying the multilingual sophistication that made Timbuktu a true cosmopolitan center. He quotes legal authorities in Arabic, clarifies points in Songhai for another local student, then switches to Fulani when addressing a question about pastoral law. It's like watching a medieval simultaneous translator, except he's also developing original legal arguments while managing multiple languages. The intellectual flexibility required is staggering, and he makes it look as effortless as breathing. The afternoon heat drives the class indoors, where thick, mud brick walls keep the temperature comfortable while protecting the precious manuscripts from humidity and insects. The architecture isn't just practical, it's essential for preserving the texts that make these discussions possible. Outside, the desert heat could turn parchment into kindling and ink into dried mud. Inside, the carefully designed ventilation and thermal mass create a microclimate that allows scholars to handle centuries-old manuscripts without turning them into expensive dust. Medieval air conditioning, powered by intelligent design rather than electricity. What strikes you most is the intellectual equality that permeates these discussions. Your teacher, a renowned African scholar, commands respect from students regardless of their origin, his expertise recognized across the Islamic world. The Moroccan student defers to his interpretation of a particularly complex passage. The Egyptian scholar asks clarifying questions with the respect due to a recognized authority. This isn't tokenism or polite acknowledgement. It's genuine intellectual recognition based on scholarly achievement rather than geographic origin or ethnic background. The teaching method itself demonstrates remarkable sophistication, not rote memorization but active debate, with students expected to defend their interpretations and challenge established authorities within proper scholarly bounds. You're encouraged to question legal precedents, propose alternative interpretations, and construct original arguments. The atmosphere combines rigorous intellectual discipline with genuine intellectual freedom, creating space for innovation within traditional frameworks. It's like being given permission to argue with the greatest legal minds in history, provided you can do so intelligently and respectfully. This cosmopolitan atmosphere explains why Timbuktu attracted scholars like a magnet. It wasn't just another provincial school, but a genuine intellectual capital where the best minds of the age gathered to push the boundaries of knowledge. The city offered something that even established centers like Cairo or Baghdad couldn't match. A place where different intellectual traditions met and cross-pollinated, creating new approaches to ancient questions. The isolation that most people imagine actually fostered innovation, as scholars developed unique perspectives unavailable in more conventional academic centers. The discussion grows more heated as different interpretations clash, voices rising with scholarly passion rather than personal animosity. Legal precedents are cited with the precision of artillery targeting. Philosophical principles are deployed like tactical weapons. The intellectual combat is fierce but friendly, driven by genuine desire to understand rather than simply win arguments. As the afternoon call to prayer interrupts your heated debate about legal precedent, you realize you're experiencing something unprecedented. A truly international university in the heart of medieval Africa. The muezzin's call echoes off the mud brick walls, temporarily suspending your discussion of commercial law as everyone prepares for the ritual that structures the day. But the intellectual energy remains, waiting to resume once devotional obligations are fulfilled. As darkness falls, oil lamps begin flickering throughout Timbuktu's libraries, revealing the most magical aspect of scholarly life when the city's true intellectual treasures emerge in the gentle lamplight. Evening study sessions transform the city into a constellation of learning, with hundreds of private libraries glowing softly as scholars and students continue their work by artificial light. It's like looking at a medieval city from above, except instead of taverns and brothels providing the evening entertainment, you have manuscript copying and theological debates. The priorities here are refreshingly different from most medieval urban centers. This isn't just romantic atmosphere. It's practical necessity, as the cooler evening air makes intensive study more comfortable while protecting valuable manuscripts from the heat of day. Desert climates being what they are, which is to say hostile to both human concentration and parchment preservation, the evening hours offer the only time when serious scholarly work can proceed without risking either heat stroke or turning priceless texts into expensive kindling. Medieval air conditioning, courtesy of the Earth's rotation. You join a small group gathered around your teacher's most precious texts, works so valuable they're only brought out for advanced students in the security of evening sessions. These aren't the manuscripts you've been practicing on during the day. Those were the scholarly equivalent of training wheels. These evening texts represent the crown jewels of his collection, volumes that have survived centuries of desert heat, political upheaval, and the occasional student who didn't wash his hands properly before handling priceless documents. The security measures would be impressive if they weren't so necessary. The lamplight reveals details invisible in daylight. Marginal notes by previous scholars, corrections and additions that show how knowledge evolved over generations of study. Under the flickering illumination, you can see where a 13th century astronomer corrected a calculation, where a 14th century legal scholar added a cross-reference, where a 15th century philosopher inserted a comment that essentially amounts to, "I think this guy missed the point entirely." The manuscripts become archaeological sites of intellectual development, each annotation representing years of careful thought. What emerges in these quiet hours is the profound sense of continuity. You're not just learning facts, but joining a chain of scholarship that stretches back centuries and will continue long after you're gone. The flickering lamplight creates shadows that seem to include all the previous students who sat in this same spot, debating the same questions, struggling with the same difficult passages. It's like joining a conversation that began before you were born and will continue after you die, except the conversation is about advanced mathematics and Islamic jurisprudence rather than gossip about neighbors. The evening sounds of Timbuktu create the perfect backdrop, distant market activity fading to whispers, the soft scratch of pens on parchment, the occasional murmur of scholarly discussion. The city doesn't shut down at sunset, but it does shift into a different mode, trading the bustle of commerce for the quieter rhythms of study. You hear the scratch of reed pens moving across paper in a dozen different libraries, creating a collective symphony of scholarship, that would be impossible to arrange, but happens naturally when an entire city prioritizes learning. Your teacher shares stories of legendary scholars who once sat in this very room, creating a sense of connection to the great minds who built Timbuktu's intellectual reputation. He speaks of Ahmad Baba, who served as the final chancellor of Sankore and wrote more than 40 books before his death in 1627. The man amassed a personal library of 1,600 volumes, which sounds impressive until you realize he actually read all of them. Unlike modern book collectors who treat libraries as interior decoration, his works remain the best sources for studying the legal history of the Western Sudan, though his prolific output suggests he either wrote very quickly or never slept. The stories aren't just academic name-dropping. They're reminders that intellectual achievement requires both brilliance and persistence. These legendary scholars didn't just have great ideas, they spent decades developing those ideas, refining their arguments, and training students to carry their work forward. The lamplight illuminates not just manuscripts, but the reality of what serious scholarship requires: years of patient effort that most people would find mind-numbingly tedious. These evening sessions reveal why Timbuktu became legendary, not for dramatic discoveries, but for the quiet, persistent dedication to learning that accumulated over generations into something truly extraordinary. The city's reputation wasn't built on intellectual fireworks, but on the steady accumulation of knowledge, the careful preservation of texts, and the training of students who would carry scholarly traditions forward. Success measured in manuscripts copied rather than battles won. As you finally close your books near midnight, the oil lamp casting dancing shadows on manuscript pages, you understand that you've experienced something that challenges every assumption about medieval Africa and the nature of learning itself. The weight of what you've experienced settles in as you prepare for sleep. You've spent a day in one of history's most sophisticated centers of learning, in a place and time that most people never knew existed. The quiet night reveals Timbuktu's true legacy, not the exotic tales of gold and mystery that would later capture European imagination, but the profound intellectual achievements that shaped the medieval world. The gold was impressive, but the books were transformative. What you've witnessed challenges fundamental assumptions about medieval Africa, medieval education, and the circulation of knowledge in the pre-modern world. Yet this story remains largely unknown. While European universities were restricting education to clergy and nobility, Timbuktu was operating a merit-based system that would seem progressive by modern standards. While European scholars were engaged in theological disputes and guild labor conflicts, African scholars in Timbuktu were calculating planetary movements with mathematical precision and developing legal frameworks that governed trade across continents. The gentle sounds of night in Timbuktu, distant prayers, the rustle of manuscript pages, the soft conversations of scholars represent something that would influence learning across Africa and the Islamic world for centuries. Timbuktu's scholarly commentaries shaped intellectual discourse in Gao, Fez, and centers throughout the region, creating networks of knowledge that spanned the Islamic world. The manuscripts being copied tonight would survive extraordinary challenges, including modern threats like the 2012 Ansar-Dine occupation, when local families and international efforts rescued over 350 manuscripts from destruction. You realize that tomorrow will bring more of the same: careful copying, intense debates, the preservation of knowledge that might otherwise be lost. Work that seems mundane but created something unprecedented. The daily routine of scholarship doesn't feel particularly heroic when you're living it. Your hand cramps from copying, your back aches from hunching over manuscripts, and sometimes the debates about legal precedents get so heated you wonder if scholarly discussion might evolve into actual combat. But this mundane dedication to learning accumulated over generations into something that challenged the intellectual landscape of the medieval world. Your day at Sankoré reveals the hidden truth about medieval Africa, not a continent waiting for outside civilization, but a place where some of the world's most advanced learning was taking place. While European chroniclers were describing Africa as a land of mystery and primitive peoples, African scholars in Timbuktu were preserving Greek philosophy, advancing Islamic jurisprudence, and developing mathematical concepts that wouldn't reach Europe for centuries. The supposed recipients of civilization were already running one of the world's most sophisticated educational systems. The University of Sankore and medieval Timbuktu represent something that challenges our entire understanding of the medieval world. A sophisticated, cosmopolitan center of learning that preserved and advanced human knowledge when much of the world was struggling with basic literacy. The decentralized network of scholars and libraries created an educational ecosystem that was simultaneously more flexible and more comprehensive than the centralized European model. Students could customize their education, scholars competed for excellence, and knowledge flowed freely across cultural and linguistic boundaries. The manuscript collections that made this possible, between 400,000 to 1 million volumes, according to historical estimates, represent an investment in learning that dwarfs most modern university libraries. These weren't just religious texts, but works covering astronomy, mathematics, medicine, philosophy, and law. The diversity of subjects and sophistication of analysis would impress contemporary academics, assuming they could get past their surprise that such scholarship was happening in medieval Africa. The legacy continues through institutions like the Ahmed Baba Institute, named after Timbuktu's greatest scholar, which works to preserve and study the remaining manuscripts. Ahmad Baba himself accumulated a personal library of 1,600 volumes and wrote more than 40 books, creating scholarly works that remain essential sources for understanding West African legal and intellectual history. His productivity suggests either remarkable efficiency or a serious case of academic insomnia. The preservation of this knowledge required not just intellectual dedication but architectural wisdom. The annual replastering ceremonies that protect mud brick walls and the careful maintenance of wooden Toron beams continue today, demonstrating how traditional building techniques created the perfect environment for manuscript preservation across centuries. As sleep approaches, you carry with you something that challenges everything most people think they know about medieval Africa. The quiet satisfaction of having glimpsed an intellectual golden age hidden in plain sight. Tonight, you've walked through one of history's most remarkable educational networks, discovering that Timbuktu's real treasure was never gold. It was the sophisticated system of learning that challenged everything most people think they know about medieval Africa. The scale of Sankore's decentralized network, with over 180 schools and hundreds of thousands of manuscripts, created an intellectual ecosystem that operated centuries ahead of its time. The manuscripts you handled, works commanding the value of dozens of gold dinars, represented more than academic curiosities. They were the foundation of a knowledge economy that influenced scholarship across Africa and the Islamic world for generations. While European chroniclers described Africa as a mysterious continent, African scholars were quietly operating one of the world's most advanced educational systems, preserving Greek philosophy, developing original mathematical concepts, and training students who would carry these traditions forward. The next time someone mentions medieval learning or suggests that sophisticated education was limited to European centers, you'll know better. You've witnessed the oil lamps burning late into scholarly nights, experienced debates about advanced mathematics that wouldn't reach Europe for centuries, and seen how an entire city organized itself around the pursuit and preservation of knowledge. As you rest, consider how the hidden legacy of Timbuktu challenges our understanding of medieval learning and what other stories remain buried beneath assumptions about the past. Hey guys, tonight we're exploring something that should be impossible. A group of people in Mali who knew about a star that Western science didn't officially discover until 1862. The Dogon people have been describing Sirius B for centuries, calling it Po-Tolo, the smallest seed. They knew it was incredibly dense, that it orbited the bright star Sirius every 50 years, and that it was invisible to the naked eye. No telescopes, no modern instruments, just ancient knowledge passed down through generations. So how did they know what took our most advanced equipment centuries to confirm? Perched on these ancient sandstone cliffs, the Dogon have been watching the same stars for over 1,000 years, seeing things that shouldn't be visible. The Bandiagara escarpment rises like a natural theater, its cliff faces carved by wind and time into perfect seats for the universe's longest-running show. And the Dogon people have been the most dedicated audience members in history, the kind who never miss a performance and somehow always know what's happening backstage. The Dogon didn't choose this location for the views, though the views are admittedly spectacular. They settled here because the cliffs offered protection from raiders and the plateau provided decent farming. But there's something to be said for accidentally creating the world's most inconvenient astronomical observatory. Every night, these cliff-dwelling farmers became part-time astrophysicists. Their work guided by the dry clarity of Dogon skies, where stars pierce the darkness with startling precision. Their daily rhythm follows a pattern that would make modern astronomers weep with envy. The men work the millet fields during the day, tending crops that depend entirely on seasonal rains and celestial timing. When the sun sets, the real work begins. Village elders gather in the courtyard, pointing at specific stars with the casual precision of people discussing the weather. Except their weather happens to be occurring several light years away. This isn't stargazing in the romantic sense. No blankets, no wishes, no wondering if that satellite is actually Venus. They mapped stars as carefully as they timed planting by the rains. It's astronomy as a practical skill, which somehow makes it more impressive than astronomy as a hobby. The echo of ceremonial drums marks these gatherings, where astronomical knowledge flows through ritual as much as observation. The oral tradition system works like a cosmic filing cabinet, maintained entirely through memory. Knowledge passes from elder to younger through stories, songs, and ceremonies that encode astronomical data within cultural narratives. The most sacred star knowledge is shared in Sigiso, a secret language taught only to circumcised men during initiation rites, illustrating how deeply astronomy is woven into their social fabric. No writing, no diagrams, no backup copies. Just human memory storing centuries of stellar observations with the reliability of a computer and the charm of bedtime stories. Here's where things get interesting. In the way that finding your grocery store cashier is actually a nuclear physicist is interesting. These isolated cliff dwellers, working with naked eyes and no instruments beyond their own brains, developed astronomical knowledge that rivals modern science. They described stellar mechanics, orbital periods, and cosmic relationships with accuracy that makes professional astronomers uncomfortable. The elevated perspective certainly helps. Standing on these plateaus, you're literally above the atmospheric distortion that plagues lowland observers. The air is thin, dry, and remarkably clear, natural conditions that would make telescope manufacturers jealous. But good viewing conditions don't explain knowing about things that are fundamentally invisible to human sight. The mystery deepens when you realize these aren't casual observations passed down through generations of telephone game. The Dogon astronomical knowledge shows remarkable consistency and precision across different villages and time periods. Multiple elders will describe the same stellar phenomena in identical terms, suggesting either extraordinary cultural discipline or access to information that shouldn't be available to pre-technological societies. What makes this particularly puzzling is the specificity. The Dogon don't just say stars move in patterns. They provide detailed descriptions of invisible stellar companions, precise orbital periods, and characteristics of celestial bodies that Western science wouldn't confirm until the 20th century. It's like discovering your neighbor has been casually mentioning quantum mechanics for the past few decades without owning a physics textbook. The contradiction is stark. An isolated agricultural society possessing astronomical knowledge that required our most advanced instruments to verify. The Dogon have been describing invisible stars and their movements with accuracy that Western science wouldn't achieve until we had telescopes powerful enough to detect white dwarf companions and measure their gravitational effects. And there's one particular star in their night sky that holds the key to understanding this impossible knowledge. Sirius dominates the winter sky like that friend who always has to be the center of attention at parties. It's the brightest star visible from Earth, blazing with the intensity of 25 suns and announcing its presence with all the subtlety of a spotlight. To every human eye that's ever looked up, Sirius appears as a single brilliant point of light, clean, simple, uncomplicated. The kind of star that doesn't require a manual. But the Dogon look at Sirius and see something entirely different. They insist it has an invisible companion star they call Potolo, which translates roughly to seed of the fonio grain. This companion is incredibly small, incredibly heavy, and completely invisible to human sight. They called Potolo the smallest seed, the hidden acorn of creation. The Dogon describe Potolo with the casual precision of people discussing the weather. They say it orbits Sirius every 50 years, following an elliptical path like a cosmic egg. They claim it's made of matter so dense that a cube of its material weighs 20,000 tons, comparable to a small mountain compressed into a pebble. Which sounds impressive until you realize they're describing something they supposedly can't see, which raises questions about their source material. In Dogon cosmology, Potolo represents the smallest seed from which the entire universe emerged. It's the cosmic equivalent of that tiny acorn that becomes a mighty oak, except this acorn weighs approximately 1 solar mass, and exists in a completely different star system. Their creation mythology weaves astronomical observation with spiritual belief in ways that would make modern astrophysicists either deeply impressed or mildly concerned about their job security. The particularly awkward part is that Western astronomy wouldn't discover Sirius B until 1862, when telescope technology finally advanced enough to detect this white dwarf companion star. Friedrich Bessel noticed that Sirius moved in a slight wobble, suggesting gravitational influence from an invisible partner. It took another 20 years before anyone actually spotted the thing, which turned out to be exactly what the Dogon had been describing for centuries. But while Alvin Clark peered through glass in 1862, the Dogon had been speaking Potolo's secrets for generations. The uncanny accuracy becomes genuinely unsettling when you compare Dogon descriptions with modern scientific measurements. They said 50 years for the orbital period. Modern astronomy confirms 50 and 1/10 years. They described incredible density. Sirius B is indeed a white dwarf with matter so compressed that a teaspoonful would weigh about 16 tons. They insisted it was invisible to the naked eye. Correct again. White dwarfs are notoriously dim despite their extraordinary mass. Every major detail the Dogon provided about Potolo has been confirmed by instruments they never possessed. The 50-year orbit, measured with atomic precision. The incredible density verified through spectroscopic analysis. The invisible nature, explained by stellar evolution theory. It's like discovering your grandmother's recipe was actually a complex chemical formula she somehow intuited without ever taking chemistry. The more you examine their astronomical knowledge, the more uncomfortable the questions become. How does an isolated agricultural society develop detailed understanding of stellar phenomena that requires advanced instruments to detect? Either the Dogon possessed observational capabilities that defy explanation, or they had access to information through means that challenge our assumptions about knowledge transmission in pre-technological cultures. This astronomical puzzle might have remained a local mystery in Mali, known only to village elders and their carefully chosen successors. But sometimes the most extraordinary discoveries happen when curious outsiders arrive, expecting to find one thing and stumble upon something that changes everything they thought they knew. In the 1930s, 2 French anthropologists arrived in Mali with notebooks and patient curiosity. Marcel Grial and Germaine Dieterlen came seeking pottery and masks, and instead found star charts etched in memory. They wanted to document Dogon art, religion, and social structures, the sort of cultural inventory work that keeps universities happy and grant committees satisfied. It was supposed to be straightforward field work, the academic equivalent of a routine oil change. But the Dogon had other plans. After months of polite cooperation, documenting masks and marriage customs, the village priests began sharing information that didn't belong in their research categories. They started describing stellar systems and cosmic mechanics with the casual precision of people discussing crop rotation. Except their crops happened to be orbiting other stars, which raised questions about their agricultural expertise. The gradual revelation process worked like the world's most exclusive astronomy club, where membership required proving your sincerity through years of patient listening. The Dogon elders tested Grial and Dieterlen's commitment, revealing deeper layers of star knowledge only after determining these foreign visitors were genuinely interested in understanding, rather than just collecting exotic stories for European audiences. The breakthrough came in 1946, when Grial spent 33 days in intensive conversation with Ogotemli, a blind elder who served as the village's keeper of cosmic knowledge. This extended dialogue unlocked much of the Dogon cosmology that had remained hidden from outsiders. When the astronomical floodgates finally opened, the anthropologists documented not just Sirius B, but Dogon knowledge of Jupiter's 4 major moons, Saturn's rings, and the Earth's rotation around the Sun. The detailed drawings and diagrams the elders provided looked like astronomical textbook illustrations, complete with orbital mechanics and stellar relationships mapped with mathematical precision. Grial and Dieterlen found themselves documenting not just cultural beliefs, but what appeared to be a comprehensive cosmic curriculum taught through oral tradition. It was like discovering your local librarian has been quietly maintaining the world's most accurate star charts, using nothing but memory and centuries-old stories. The careful documentation process consumed decades of their careers. Grial and Dieterlen spent years recording these oral traditions, cross-referencing accounts from different villages, and trying to understand how isolated cliff dwellers had developed knowledge that required instruments they'd never possessed. Their published works laid the foundation for understanding this astronomical puzzle. Le Mythe Cosmologique appeared in 1950, followed by Conversations with Ogotemli in 1970, both documenting the Sirius system details before Western telescopes had fully confirmed them. This cultural exchange represented the first time Western academia encountered the paradox of ancient astronomical precision among pre-technological societies. Their research would eventually inspire Robert Temple's investigation and bring the Dogon mystery to global attention, transforming what began as routine anthropological fieldwork into one of the most debated cases in the study of ancient knowledge. The French connection had accidentally opened a cosmic puzzle that would challenge researchers for decades. The Dogon's knowledge of Sirius and its invisible companion, however, represented only a fraction of their astronomical understanding. Their cosmic curriculum extends far beyond the famous binary system, encompassing celestial mechanics throughout the solar system that shouldn't be visible from Earth. The Dogon described Jupiter's 4 major moons with the same casual precision they use for Potolo, incorporating references to 4 spirits circling the giant planet into their ritual practices. They speak of Saturn's encircling halo, its ring system, despite both phenomena being invisible without telescopic assistance. Here's where the puzzle becomes genuinely uncomfortable. Jupiter's major moons require telescopic observation to detect. Saturn's rings are invisible to the naked eye. These aren't casual observations you make while tending crops. They're specific astronomical features that demand instruments the Dogon never possessed. Yet they describe these phenomena with accuracy that suggests either remarkable observational capabilities or access to information through means that challenge our assumptions about knowledge transmission. The Dogon describe the solar system structure with mathematical precision that defies conventional understanding of pre-technological societies. They understand that Earth revolves around the Sun, not the other way around. They map complex orbital mechanics of multiple planetary bodies, describing how celestial objects influence each other through gravitational relationships. Their legends speak of a spiral galaxy like ours, long before it appeared on any astronomer's map. Their claims extend to a 3rd star in the Sirius system called Mea, which they describe as a red dwarf companion to the famous binary pair. Modern studies haven't fully ruled out a Sirius C, echoing Dogon whispers of a third star called Emeya. The Dogon describe it with the same casual precision they use for Potolo, which either demonstrates remarkable consistency in their oral traditions or suggests they're working from source material that's more comprehensive than our current observations. The cosmic knowledge integrates seamlessly with their understanding of time, seasons, and agricultural cycles. The Dogon use stellar observations for practical applications, timing planting seasons based on the positions of stars that won't be visible for months. They coordinate their agricultural calendar with celestial events, showing how astronomical knowledge serves immediate survival needs rather than abstract intellectual curiosity. It's astronomy as a farming tool, which somehow makes it more impressive than astronomy as a hobby. Their comprehensive celestial mapping includes knowledge of stellar classifications and relationships between different types of stars. The Dogon describe how various stars differ in size, temperature, and life cycle, categorizing celestial bodies with systematic precision. They understand concepts like stellar evolution, describing how certain stars change over time and what this means for their cosmic neighborhoods. The mystery deepens when you consider the scope of their astronomical knowledge. The Dogon don't just describe isolated phenomena. They present a coherent understanding of cosmic relationships that spans multiple star systems and planetary bodies. Their knowledge shows remarkable internal consistency, with different aspects of their astronomical understanding supporting and reinforcing each other like pieces of a complex puzzle. Recent astronomical studies have found potential evidence supporting some Dogon claims about additional bodies in the Sirius system. Advanced observations using space-based telescopes and gravitational analysis have detected possible perturbations that could indicate the presence of additional stellar companions. The Dogon descriptions may prove as accurate as their knowledge of Potolo, which would raise even more uncomfortable questions about their information sources. When asked how they acquired such precise astronomical knowledge, the Dogon don't point to centuries of careful observation or remarkable cultural memory. Instead, they point to visitors who came from the very star system they describe so accurately. The Namo occupy center stage in Dogon oral tradition as the amphibious beings from Sirius who allegedly brought astronomical and mathematical knowledge to Earth. The word Nomo means those who make order, framing these beings as cosmic teachers rather than casual visitors. According to Dogon accounts, the Namo came specifically to share wisdom about stellar systems and mathematical principles, establishing themselves as fundamental to Dogon understanding of cosmic mechanics. They weren't temporary guests, they were educators with a curriculum that spanned multiple star systems. The Dogon describe these beings with the matter-of-fact precision they use for everything else that shouldn't exist. The Nomo were amphibious, requiring water to survive, and possessed superior knowledge of cosmic mechanics. They visited Earth in ancient times specifically to educate humanity, arriving in what Grial recorded as a dramatic descent marked by thunder, smoke, and lightning that shook the Earth and announced their cosmic origins. The detailed accounts of the Namo's appearance read like a biology textbook written by someone who's never seen conventional biology. They had the bodies of fish but could function on land, possessed superior intelligence, and served as both teachers and spiritual guardians. The Dogon describe them with the same casual authority they use for describing invisible stars, which suggests either remarkable consistency in their storytelling or access to a very unusual faculty directory. Artistic depictions and ritual representations of these beings remain central to Dogon spiritual practices and creation stories. Village ceremonies honor the Namo through masks, dances, and religious observances that integrate cosmic knowledge with daily spiritual life. Even today, masks of the Namo appear at funerals and the 60-year Sigwi festival, linking Earth to stars in silent homage. The beings aren't relegated to ancient history. They continue to feature prominently in contemporary Dogon culture as ongoing spiritual presences and sources of wisdom. This explanation challenges conventional understanding of knowledge transmission in ways that make education theorists either deeply uncomfortable or professionally obsolete. The mythological framework offers a complete solution to the astronomical precision puzzle. Advanced beings from the Sirius system share detailed knowledge about their home stellar neighborhood with receptive human students. The connection between the Nomo's alleged origins in the Sirius system and the Dogon's detailed knowledge of that same stellar region creates a perfect circular logic that's either brilliantly coherent or suspiciously convenient. The teachers came from exactly the star system the students describe with impossible accuracy. The cosmic curriculum matches the cosmic address. Whether you interpret this origin story as literal truth or sophisticated metaphor, it demonstrates the deep integration of astronomical knowledge with Dogon cultural identity and spiritual beliefs. The Nomo aren't separate from Dogon cosmology. They're fundamental to it. Their teaching role explains not just the precision of stellar knowledge, but its preservation through oral tradition and its central importance in Dogon society. The story works on multiple levels simultaneously. As literal truth, it provides a complete explanation for impossible knowledge. As metaphor, it represents the reverence for cosmic wisdom and the importance of preserving astronomical understanding across generations. As cultural narrative, it integrates scientific precision with spiritual meaning in ways that Western education systems struggle to achieve. This remarkable explanation, however, has created decades of heated academic debate. For decades, scientists have wrestled with an uncomfortable question. How do you explain away knowledge that seems impossible, especially when that knowledge keeps proving accurate? It's the academic equivalent of finding your mechanic knows more about rocket science than NASA, except the mechanic happens to live in a cliff village without electricity, and their rocket science keeps being confirmed by space telescopes. The ongoing scientific debate about the origins and accuracy of Dogon astronomical claims has created camps within the academic community that approach the subject with all the diplomatic grace of a food fight in a philosophy department. Supporters point to the remarkable precision of Dogon's stellar knowledge. Skeptics suggest various contamination theories. Both sides argue with the passionate intensity of people whose research grants depend on being right. Various theories have emerged to explain the Dogon's knowledge, ranging from ancient contact with advanced civilizations to contamination from European sources. The ancient contact theory suggests extraterrestrial visitors shared cosmic knowledge with isolated African peoples, which is either the most elegant solution to an impossible puzzle or the most creative excuse for not understanding how knowledge transmission actually works. The contamination theory proposes that Dogon elders learned about Sirius B from Western visitors or missionaries, then integrated this information into their traditional stories with such thoroughness that it appears ancient. Carl Sagan and Ian Ridpath led the skeptical charge, arguing that the Dogon learned about Sirius B from Western sources and then retrofitted this knowledge into their oral traditions. Sagan suggested that European visitors or missionaries shared astronomical information that the Dogon absorbed and reinterpreted through their cultural lens. Ridpath pointed out that the first published accounts of Dogon astronomical knowledge appeared after Western discovery of Sirius B, suggesting the timing was suspiciously convenient for contamination theories. Counter-arguments from researchers highlight the depth and integration of astronomical knowledge within Dogon culture and oral traditions. The cosmic information isn't casually mentioned in isolated stories. It's woven throughout their creation mythology, ritual practices, and daily cultural expressions. The knowledge shows internal consistency across different villages and time periods, suggesting systematic preservation rather than recent addition. Critics of the contamination theory point out that integrating complex astronomical concepts into existing oral traditions would require extraordinary cultural coordination and sophisticated understanding of the source material. The methodological challenges of studying oral traditions create genuine difficulties in determining when specific knowledge entered Dogon culture. Unlike written records with clear dates, oral traditions exist in cultural time rather than chronological time. Stories change and evolve while maintaining core elements, making it nearly impossible to pinpoint when particular information became part of the tradition. The absence of written records means researchers must rely on cultural consistency and cross-referencing between different informants, which provides valuable data but can't definitively resolve timing questions. The tension between scientific materialism and the possibility that isolated cultures can develop sophisticated understanding through different methods reflects broader philosophical questions about knowledge, acquisition, and cultural wisdom. Western science assumes that certain discoveries require specific technological capabilities and follows predictable developmental patterns. The Dogon case suggests that different cultures might access cosmic knowledge through methods that don't fit conventional scientific models, whether through extraordinary observational skills, cultural knowledge, preservation, or alternative information sources. Regardless of origin theories, the Dogon's astronomical accuracy remains a testament to the power of careful observation and cultural knowledge preservation. Their stellar knowledge demonstrates remarkable precision, regardless of how they acquired it, showing that human cultures can maintain complex information across generations through oral tradition alone. The debate continues, but the fundamental mystery persists. How did they know what they knew? This remarkable story raises lasting questions about the different paths to understanding our cosmic neighborhood. The Dogon story challenges our assumptions about how knowledge is discovered and preserved, whether through telescopes or through generations of careful sky-watching and cultural transmission. Western science assumes that certain discoveries require specific technological capabilities, following predictable developmental patterns. The Dogon suggests that different cultures might access cosmic knowledge through methods that don't fit conventional scientific models, which is either profoundly humbling or mildly embarrassing for our educational systems. Their astronomical accuracy demonstrates that human cultures can maintain complex information across generations through oral tradition alone. The different paths to understanding our cosmic neighborhood suggest we might learn something from cultures that see the universe through different eyes, though this requires admitting our telescopes aren't the only way to study stars. Somewhere in Mali, people still gather under the same stars, carrying forward ancient wisdom that continues to spark wonder and debate in our modern world.